Hello and welcome to my video where I'm going to be showing you how to make a circular piece of wall art using macrame techniques. I decided to use yarn as well as rope in this project in order to weave in extra colours and textures, and I added a little mirror in the centre. To follow along you will need these items. Okay, so first you'll need to cut the lengths of rope that you'll need. I cut 18 lengths of rope, each about 60 centimeters long. You may need more or fewer pieces depending on the rope thickness and the size of curtain ring that you're using. You just need enough rope to cover the curtain ring with knots. Take one piece of rope, fold it in half, and place the loop end under the ring. Then fold this loop down over the ring from the inside and bring the ends of the rope up through this loop. Pull the ends of the rope downwards to tighten. This is one cow hitch knot completed. Keep adding lengths of rope in the same way until the curtain ring is completely covered. Lay these pieces of rope so that they're sticking straight outwards from the ring, ready for the next step. Next, we're going to start weaving. I began with some lighter weight yarn, so DK or worsted weight, in red. You'll need to guesstimate how much yarn you'll need to go once around the circle. I used a length of about 2 meters and that was more than enough. You need to choose one pair of rope strands to start on, and you'll need to wrap the yarn around the left-hand strand of rope first. This is assuming we'll be weaving in an anti-clockwise direction. Take the end of the piece of yarn that you have and leave a tail of excess yarn at the beginning of about 20 centimeters. Wrap the yarn around the first rope strand once, like so, then push that wrap up against the curtain ring. Make sure to keep the yarn tail out of the way so you don't accidentally weave with it. It might help you to tie it loosely onto a rope strand on the left. Take the long yarn strand and push a loop of it back under the same rope strand to the left. Feed the long strand of yarn over the rope strand and down through the loop of yarn you've just made. Pull the yarn upwards towards the curtain ring to tighten it. You will now have the yarn wrapped twice around that rope strand, so now we can move on and do the same thing to the next rope strand. So next, take the strand of yarn under the pair of rope strands, leaving a loop in the yarn to the left of the right-hand strand. Take the yarn back over this rope strand and then down through the yarn loop. Tighten and pull the wrapped yarn up to the curtain ring. Make another wrap of yarn around this rope strand by again taking the yarn underneath the rope from left to right, whilst leaving a loop of yarn on the left. Then take the yarn down through this loop and tighten. You need to repeat this process for every pair of rope strands all the way around the curtain ring. By the end, every rope strand will have yarn wrapped twice around it. Under, leave a loop, go down through the loop and tighten, and so on. Once you get back to where you started, tie the ends of the yarn together in a double knot. I then did exactly the same steps with some yellow DK weight yarn. I recommend starting and ending each piece of yarn at the same point to keep all of the knots together at the back. I then did the same again with sari silk yarn to add a different texture. I then moved on to weaving with yellow super chunky yarn in exactly the same way. And then some purple super chunky yarn. I found that these chunkier yarns were definitely more effective and easier to handle, so I stuck with these chunkier yarns going forward in the project. After weaving around with the sari silk, the yellow and the purple super chunky yarns again, I now want to weave with the white rope that I use for the base. This means that instead of wrapping the yarn around the rope, you're going to be wrapping the rope around the yarn. Note that the last round of purple yarn weaving was made with a piece of yarn twice the length as usual, so that I can do this next cycle of rope weaving with it as well. So take this yarn you have left over and lay a loop of it over the next rope strand that's to the right. The rest of the yarn should still be to the left of this rope strand. Then feed the end of this rope strand upwards and feed it down through the loop of yarn you've created. Pull the rope upwards towards the ring to tighten. Repeat until you have rope knots all the way around. Then keep weaving with the yarns for as long as you like. I did another round of purple yarn, sari silk yarn, yellow yarn, and then purple yarn again, and you can see the results here. You'll also see how I tightened the purple yarn a bit too much, which meant I mostly covered up the rope round, so when you do this, try and keep the rope section exposed. I've also begun the following round already, where I'm braiding the rope around the outside edge. This creates a nice border, and to do this we only need to use rope. We've now finished with the yarn. So take a strand of rope and lay a loop of it over the rope strand to the right, keeping the rope tail on the left. Then bring this rope tail under the straight rope strand, up through the loop you've created, and pull it upwards to tighten, whilst holding the other rope strand straight. Make sure the knot is tight enough and neat before repeating these steps all the way around. So make a loop over the next rope strand with the tail on the left. Take the tail under the other strand, up through the loop, and tighten, and so on. When you've finished, don't tie the ends of the rope together at the back like you did with the yarns. Instead, do one more round of rope knots, but this time all you do is tie pairs of rope together using regular single knots, just to help make the border nice and sturdy. Simply take a pair of rope strands that are next to each other and tie them in a single knot, and so on all the way around. And you should end up with something a bit like this. If you turn the macrame over now, you'll see a big mess of yarns, so now is the time to cut off the excess and neaten it up a bit. Make sure the knots are tied securely and then cut off the yarn tails. Apply some strong clear drying glue, like all-purpose or fabric glue, all around the back of the rope border, as well as around the yarn tails. You want to ensure that the outer edge doesn't become loose over time, and you also want to try and stick the yarn tails down as flat as possible. And leave the glue to dry. To give the rope a fluffy appearance at the ends, first unravel each piece of rope with your hands, by simply untwisting them and separating the individual strands. Then take a slicker brush or a fine comb and brush all of the strands to separate them even further. Trim the ends of the strands to neaten them up, aiming to keep everything even and balanced. I used a piece of paper to help me cut the strands approximately to the same length. Note that we'll be trimming these strands again, so don't cut them too short. This is just a trim to neaten them up. It's time for the last round of knots now, as we repeat the last round of single knots, but this time with the fluffy rope strands. To add the mirror to the centre, just glue it to the back of the curtain ring, like so. Leave this glue to dry. Your ornament should now look something like this. In order to display this ornament on the wall without the rope strands drooping down, you'll need to use liquid fabric stiffener on the fibres. So put some baking or parchment paper down to protect your work surface and place the ornament on top. Make sure you brush the rope strands to make them neat and make them point straight outwards from the centre. The position the strands are in now is how they'll stay once they dry. I put some fabric stiffener in a small plastic container and then used a cheap paintbrush to brush it onto the fibres around the outside, from the rope braid outwards. You want all of these fibres to be saturated, so make sure you put enough on. Then leave this to dry. I happen to have a wire wreath form in the size I wanted, so I used that as my cutting guide. But since you likely won't have that, just cut out a circle of paper to use as your template instead. Then just use some sharp scissors to cut all of the outer rope strands to the same length. You'll want the strands to be roughly 2 to 3 inches long. If they're too long, more than about 3 inches I'd say, they'll likely droop downwards over time. Then use a strand of yarn and a yarn needle to add a hanging loop to the top. I fed each end of the yarn loop down through knots at the back of the ornament and tied them in place. And that's it, your macrame wall art is complete. I'm pleased with the result, and I really like the fact that lots of colour can be incorporated using the yarn, unlike with most macrame projects which are often white or cream. I hope you follow along with this project, and thank you very much for watching.